Hey, I see you over there. What does this pussy shit I'm seeing over here? I'm pretty sure I raised you better than that. You wanna fake gamble at home? There are much better ways you could be doing it. Like playing with cardboard crack. In fact, how about this? I've got the right game just here for you. Meet the hit Bushiroad card game. Victory Spark, where you get to play as anime girls while battling your friends. What? The game's dead? Bah! Details. It's not important what Bushiroad says about the game's well-being. It's about what's in here that's important. Come with me. We'll talk more about this and I'll show you more about the game.
Yes, I know, we're finally back. After all these decades, we are finally doing the second video on the history of all of the card games that Bushiroad has made across the years. Because trust me, they have made a lot of them, just that, let's just say that many of them are no longer with us at this point. While most people who are into playing with their cardboard crack might remember them more for Cardfight Vanguard, which was a little popular for a little while back in the day, especially when some people were getting sick of the pendulum thing in Yu-Gi-Oh! At the time. And for the people who are more into staring at or playing with anime cardboard crack, you might remember them more for Weiss Schwarz, a game that has done pretty well for Bushiroad all these years, even till this day. Well, the game we're going to be talking about today is one of the latter, and in fact, it actually has quite a lot of ties to Weiss Schwarz in many different ways. For one thing, this game actually released in 2008, the same year as Weiss Schwarz, and not only that, but the person who designed Weiss Schwarz, Nakamura Satoshi, was the person who also designed this game, which would release slightly after Weiss Schwarz. So there some of you might already be wondering, like, but wait a minute, why are they releasing two anime card games in the same year? They're gonna compete with themselves. Are they stupid? Some of the things that they do aren't exactly the brightest. But at the very least, when it came to the specific release of these two games, it would seem, at least looking at what released at the time, that they quite likely did this precisely because of the fact that they thought that these two games would end up targeting two very different audiences. Because you see, Victory Spark wasn't actually always Victory Spark. It's a lot like in Scooby-Doo where they pull the mask off of the villain and it's just like, Victory Spark, it was you all along? Well, it's actually the reverse, because originally when Victory Spark was first incepted, it was released as a game called Sunday vs. Magazine, the trading card game. The game was originally designed to only use IPs from Shonen Sunday and Shonen Magazine, and was initially meant to be a game that was designed to celebrate the 50th anniversary of these two publications. Those kind of IPs that obviously target a very different audience as compared to what Weiss Schwarz initially had with stuff such as Persona, some of the visual novels such as the Capo. It targets a slightly different audience of people, and it's most likely precisely because of this difference that they thought that they could release both of these games in the same year and kind of have them not cannibalize each other, I suppose. However, less than 2 years after Sunday vs. Magazine, the trading card game release, it was already being shelved as the game basically ended servers before the end of its second year. However, 1 year and 3 months into the production cycle, they released Victory Spark, which had the exact same systems as this game, except that there was a much bigger variety in the IPs that were used in it. It actually includes things that, especially if you look across the years, was going along with things such as Altalia Meruru, To Love Ru, Kami no Mi, as well as Real Kyobu. So it goes in a very different direction from what the original Sunday vs. Magazine IPs actually tried to do. Just after the end of service of the original card game, all of the original IPs as well as its cards were basically moved into Victory Spark, the game that would go on to take its place. However, in spite of that, Victory Spark also didn't do extremely well, and within 4 years in 2013, the game would basically end its service provision as well. So, as you can imagine, this is a very stark difference from what happened with Weiss Schwarz, the game which not only is it surviving till this day, but in 2020 was one of Bushiroad's biggest earners that the company even had in its entirety. So the game was actually selling really well. Whether or not people are playing the game is a different thing altogether, but at the very least, it was doing well. And so it does kind of beg the question, why did Victory Spark fail, where Why Schwartz seems to have succeeded explosively at the time? And well, in order to answer that question, we're first going to have to look at the systems of the game, as I do believe that this, to some extent, also plays into what made one successful where the other was not. And so, in order to do that, we're first going to have to actually talk about the rules and how the game is played. And in order to get us more into the mood of actually being degenerate gamblers, I figured we may as well... Where's my sunglasses? Okay, this isn't actually a bit... Like, I actually recorded the initial opening bit that was actually a bit just before this, and it would seem that I somehow misplaced my sunglasses within the 2 hours that has passed between then and now. So for now, we're gonna have to improvise a lot. Though I do have this lying on the table, so yeah, it's a little different. I know. We'll just have to bear with it for now, as this is all I have. But we're gonna go gambling, baby. I'm gonna bring in the big bucks and have the next part of the video in a much better place.
We roll high and we win all the way, just like any big gambler would. That actually hurts a lot. Okay, yeah, that didn't quite go as planned. Okay, look, to be real with you guys, I'm actually not here because I won't beg or anything. In fact, I actually lost big and I'm actually here on work. So I've been up until like 11 PM working and all, but let's not get behind us. We're here to talk about games and we're here to talk about... So, how's the game? Let's talk about that a lot. Okay, so this is the board of the game. As you can see, there are a lot of pretty colors. It's kind of like a pachinko machine during the fever period. Although, truth be told, there are very few moving parts within this. There's only like 6 things that you actually even need to take into account. This is where you put your deck. This is the graveyard or the discard pile, depending on whatever game you play. This is the energy mana zone. This is where you put all the cards that you would then use to pay costs for things later on. This is the ring. This is the bench. This is where the field where you put all of your active characters. And this is the retire zone. Basically, the retire zone kind of works like inverse Pokemon, where instead of getting a new card every single time you beat the opponent in battle, if you get beaten in battle, you will put one character from your ring onto the retire pile. And once this reaches 10, you lose the game instead. So the way this game is played is basically you have multiple characters with different levels. So it's a level 3, a level 2, or level 1. I believe there's also a level 4 card somewhere, but unfortunately we don't have that, but we're just gonna do this. So the way the game is actually recommended to be played by the own tutorial that the game gives, it basically states that on the very first turn, you kind of want to put a character who has a bench effect in the ring at the very start. So we'll go with Nagi over here. Her effect basically states that when she's in the bench, which is back here, and when you have more cards in the retire zone than the opponent, your character that's in the ring in front basically can get 500 defense, which is the stat over here. And this attack over here. And basically when you start the game, you will put the card that you want to start with on the field, on the ring spot face down, and then you would shuffle your deck, and then you would put your deck here, draw 5, and the game begins from here. So once you have done that, the player who goes first, he doesn't actually draw a card. Instead, you both first just reveal the character that you have put on the field, and then the guy who goes first would play out his turn. And the way that a turn progresses is that you go through the stand phase or the upkeep phase, followed by the draw phase, and then the energy phase, where you can pick a card from your hand and put it into the energy zone face down. So you don't really have to reveal to your opponent what card you put in. Although from what I understand, the way that it is explained or recommended, you kind of want to put in a card that you are very unlikely to play. So in this case, you have basically the card with the thunder mark over here at the bottom. This card basically, its effect only triggers if it comes off the top of the deck directly onto the field, which basically means it's fucking useless right now, unlike the main character of the anime. So it being a level 3 also means that you would have to pay 3 cost in order to summon it. So as you can see, its stats aren't that much impressive compared to everything else. It actually has less defense than a level 2 by 1000. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put this away for now. You can only do this once per turn, and once you have done this, you go into the character phase. During the character phase, you can basically, as long as you have an empty bench slot over here, move a character from the front into the bench for as long as you have energy that can be used. So in this case, we have 1 energy since we're going first. We can tap this to basically bring this down. When we bring down the character, the ring becomes empty. Once this happens, you automatically flip up the next card and put it on the board. Okay, that's actually a trigger. As you can see, there's a little F here. This means that this is a fucked up card in that it is supposed to be very, very strong, hence the F for you to pay respects to your opponent, because when this gets triggered, basically what it does is that, well, I mean, it's kind of useless now because it's the very first turn, but when we first put this on the field, depending on the number of cards you have in your retire zone, you can remove as many cards from your opponent's side of the field as you desire. So if your opponent has like 4 characters, like 1, 2, 3, 4, if you have 4 cards here or more, you can basically board wipe the guy and he kind of gets fucked. So you kind of don't want to trigger this in the first turn because you have absolutely nothing. So it doesn't do anything here. And as you can see, its stats aren't super high either. For the record, once the character is out on the field, you can't really just free swap around its position like in Y Short. You can't move the character on the bench onto the ring and just like do a swap like this. Once they are in their positions, they're kind of fixed unless they die or unless you drag it down to the bench. But once all 3 bench slots are fixed, you can't bring a character down anymore either. So once this is done, you can then go on to your attack phase, and as the first player, you could actually declare an attack, which you might think is a little silly. Like, why as the main first player can I actually declare an attack in this position? Like, you know, am I just gonna hit the guy with his thing in front of me and actually just beat him? Like, because I can just react and like one time kill a guy if this was Yu-Gi-Oh or something. But with this game, you can't really do that because of the fact that, as you can see, the attack stats on most cards are actually lower than the defense stats on most of the cards as well, right? It's 3 to 5.5, 2.5 to, you know. And in order to attack, basically what you need to do is you need to rest a character on the field. And when you rest that character, that constitutes an attack, and basically this character would then use its attack to hit the opponent. So with an attack as low as 2,500, we really aren't gonna beat anything. However, because our luck is shit, we kind of pulled a character that only has 2.5k attack defense, which is like extremely abysmal, since this is something that's meant to bot wipe the motherfucker. Once you bot wipe him and this triggers, he basically has nothing in his bench, so he can't even declare an attack. So this will just kind of stay there, and you can just, on your turn, move this back and then do something else with it. But shit happens, and so basically what's likely gonna happen is that on our opponent's turn, he's gonna pull back his thing, and then like he's gonna have something in front that can outright beat us, just like in this situation. So when we do take the attack from him and we actually lose the character on the field, what's gonna happen is that he hits us, this goes into the retire zone, and once this goes into the retire zone, we would then flip up the next character, and this would become the next character that's on the field. This also happens to have a triggered ability as demarcated by this like little lightning thing over here. And it basically states that if we have a character in the retire zone, when this comes onto the field, we can just choose to move it to the bench instead. So we basically just gain an additional body in the back, and we can just flip up another card to continue the Pachinko gamble. Oh, look! We have 1 now. So it's a little late since he has already done his thing, and he has triggered his thing. So we can't really do anything about getting rid of his back row and actually causing him to like big problems with it. Although we could set him back a little, since if we use this effect now to target the back row, it means that on his next turn he has 1 fewer character that he can attack us with. And so that's something that we could actually consider doing as well. For the record, looking at all of these numbers, you might then be wondering, well, with defense stats as high as 5,500 and every character having such low stats, how do you actually beat the enemy? And the way it works is that damage cleanup, which I guess in Yu-Gi-Oh! It doesn't really exist, nor for Y Short, so it might be a little bit of an extract concept for some, but in this game, damage kind of works in the same way as magic in a way. If my opponent, let's say, had a character like this Hayate with 4,000 defense here, and I had 2 characters in the back, I can't tap 1 and instantly beat it. But because I have applied 2.5k of my attack to his defense, the next time I attack and declare an attack again,
this becomes basically me applying this to him twice to deal a total of 5k to the one character, therefore beating the character. The attack and defense stats both kind of matter during the respective action that's taken. It's more like the defense in Magic than it is the defense in Yu-Gi-Oh, which is fucking useless unless the character has been tilted. Just like me in real life! But yeah, so that would be the way an entire phase would typically work. We're going to bring this down for now. And tap 1. Yes, the amount that you tap is the same regardless of the level on the field. So the most high value way to bring a character onto the field is typically just through doing this and triggering them onto the field. And voila, we have a vanilla 3.5k, 7k. So we are pretty much set that whatever our opponent has for the most part, as you can see from everything else in our hand, will probably be able to punch down with just like 2 characters. So we are in a decent spot, and it'll be a little difficult for them to punch through 7,000 as well. On top of that, because of the current situation that we are in, right, it's our turn and they don't actually have anything on their side of the field in the graveyard, in the retire zone yet. This actually triggers, so we actually get 500 more defense over here as well, which doesn't really help us at this current point, because once we do this and punch the motherfucker, we'll most likely lose this effect as well. Of course, there you might think that, oh, but what if he does hit this? What if he hits his own like F-bomb and we kind of get fucked because he tries to wipe our front line? Well, over there you then have these cards, jammer cards, I guess. Like this is basically the equivalent of a counter spell in Magic the Gathering. Or like, you know, I'm sure like you guys have something in Yu-Gi-Oh as well that I'm not remembering the name of, like Solomon's Judgment, except that it's a hand trap instead. So for this one, what it basically states is that the condition is you need 2 cards with Hayate no Gotoku. Yeah, it's stated down here in like really like tiny ass font over here. That is near invisible and hard to see. It says Hayate no Gotoku, which is the name of the series. So basically you have 2 of them on the field. You can just play this and cancel a trigger, which are these, or a cancel effect. So you can use it to counter the counter or to counter his trigger. And if he were to actually trigger the thing in his turn now, you could basically do this. And because of the fact that, you know, if he has the same conditional counter as you do, because of the fact that it's his first turn, he doesn't actually have 3 characters or 2 characters in the back, so he can't actually do anything about it, and you can basically stop the effect as well. So on his turn, because of how big our attack is, he is most likely going to have to use 3 different characters to punch through it. So he's going to have to attack 3 times, beat this goes in here, and then we'll trigger the next card. And this also has a trigger effect. Jesus, so many trigger effects. So for this one, it basically, the condition is that as long as you have 2 energy here, you can look through your deck for a character with the Student Council or the Butler trait. So yeah, it's basically just either Hinagiku or one of the Student Council characters, or Mr. Blue Hair himself, and put it onto the ring instead. In case you're wondering, no, the condition is just you need to have 2 energy. You don't have to pay 2 energy to do it. As long as you have 2 or more, you can just like do this as long as this character appears on the field. And if your opponent can't react to that, you basically can just put whatever the fuck you want on it. Considering the fact that he would like hypothetically have to use all 3 characters to beat through our Hinagiku over here, we don't really need something that is super tanky. However, we do want something that can synergize well with what we have. I don't actually know if it's actually in the trial deck. I don't think it is, because like I don't remember seeing it anywhere, but we might have something that we can still use even in spite of that. Okay, I don't think we do actually. Like there isn't a we don't really have a synergy piece, not piss, that would actually benefit us in this very specific situation, as the card that would benefit us just doesn't seem to be in the deck. Now, I guess for the sake of the explanation, I could put this on the field instead. So like the way this effect works is that when you use its effect to put something on the field, it doesn't count as like it coming off and triggering the effect. So this Hayate unfortunately actually doesn't do much. Once that has happened, you basically, this card which was supposed to be on the slot will get sent over here. And from her own effect, she will give him 500, 500 for the rest of the turn, which is the opponent's turn. So yeah, it won't do much when it comes to our turn, but it gives me a chance to explain one of the other core concepts of the game as well. So we'll draw our card for the end of the turn. In case you're wondering what this exclamation mark over here means, this basically works more like a trap in Yu-Gi-Oh! Or a secret in Hearthstone, where it has a very specific condition stated in the effect. This would go into a slot that I have not actually mentioned because they actually added a additional place spot into the game later on, where this would basically go on as a secret instead. And then when the opponent triggers the effect, you would flip this up and you would trigger the effect. So for this one specifically, it basically states when the opponent attacks for the second or third time in the turn. And this is actually going to play into what I'm going to talk about next. If it was a partner attack, at the end of the attack, you may flip this up and you give the character on the field over here 500, 500. Every single card has its name up here in the green bar over here. And aside from the name in the green bar, in this like very hard to see, maybe if you're colorblind, you might even be able to see the color bar below it. There is a different name for a different card. So for this card, its name is just Hayate's name, and the card in the other color is basically this Cutie's Hayate. Either way, so there are two things you can therefore use this card for in conjunction with this card. You could either, we're going to put this here for now because we don't really need secrets, because secrets are a garbage mechanic that was actually barely used in the game. There are two ways we could use this card. The first way is that we could put it on the field. So we would pay the 1, we would send this to the graveyard, and then we would put this level 1 Hayate in her place. And what this basically does is that when we next attack, even though his attack is only 2,500, even if the opponent has like a Hinagiku on their end with 7,000, so we would need all 3 of their powers combined to beat her. This is basically considered what is the game calls a partner card, and therefore you can use it for a partner attack in the situation where if you tap the character with the partner for the character that's currently on the field, this attack is considered a partner attack, which basically just one-shots the motherfucker. Yeah, it does not multiply attack at all. Whatever their stats is, it's irrelevant. You one-shot them like a Pachinko fever time instead. Meanwhile, for the opponent, they can also use the partner card on their side of the field on the defense. So a partner card can be used for both offense and defense. Like let's say in the case of this Hinagiku, this is the partner effect, which is or the partner card, I guess. Why am I shuffling the deck? I'm not supposed to shuffle it, but never mind. So the way it would work is that when your opponent attacks, if your opponent attacks and this attack was supposed to beat you, you can play this from hand as a partner defense and negate the attack altogether. So whatever, like if this attack was gonna be lethal, you would just play this and the attack would no longer be lethal. Even if your opponent does a partner attack like this, right, the partner attack, and it's supposed to be a one-shot that kills you regardless of your defense, the partner defense overrides the partner attack. So keeping this in your hand, if you have the card on the field as a form of defense, actually is a pretty good and effective thing that you can consider as well. Yeah, the one big form of decision making with the RNG as well is this. Once again, there is the issue of the fact that this is also an RNG system, so you kind of need to hope that you have both aligned in your deck through like the RNG decks, just because this game doesn't really give you all too much in terms of ways to like actively search or draw. As you can see from what has been happening up till now, I have only been drawing 1 card a turn, and I have not drawn a single other card that lets me draw more. So yeah, you're kind of very limited on the draw in general with this game. And you do have ways to pull cards out from here and here, but even those tend to be fairly conditional as well. So in terms of how difficult it is to draw, it's kind of like with Yu-Gi-Oh, I guess. So it's the exact same card, so that's a little bit funny, but basically what this card allows you to do is to send a card from your opponent's backline, the bench, into the either their energy zone or their graveyard. So if they had taken 2 characters to attack him, you can basically use this to eliminate the back row that still remains, and then this would be on the field. So yeah, I didn't script that, by the way. That was actually completely random, but so like in that case, you would actually survive with this guy on the field. Like yeah, it kind of just happens in a very RNG way with a lot of the things in this game, as you can imagine. The power spike and power like fall off when your RNG is bad is probably like maximized a lot more than it is in other games. Is the sense that I have gotten from this game from the time I've been trying to experiment with it as well, because a lot of the strongest effects in the game, like stuff like the board wipe for example, stuff like the deck search, stuff like this, which just like one-shot something off his field all of a sudden for free. All of this come from cards that just kind of plop off the top of your deck and just happen to do something really strong at the time. And so at this point, we would probably draw the next card, which would be this. This also doesn't really help us very much. Like, we would probably just end this turn just like doing the same thing again, probably attacking with all three at the end and hoping we can knock two things into his retire zone. And you also have things like this, basically, this level 3 here, which this one basically states that if you have more cards in your retire zone than the opponent, if it gets triggered, you can just heal for 1 as well. So like, yeah, the effects that you get from things triggering onto the field are very immense, and you don't really have a lot of things that trigger from the hand. As you can see, like, we have went through all of these cards so far, and not a single card actually triggers when played onto the field from your hand or anything like that. Game enders and healers kind of do have a little icon on the top here, the F-bomb here, or the H for hentai over here. Basically every series probably has an effect similar to it, or basically just the effect itself. Yeah, as you can see, you have 4 counter spells, or like the nullification spells. You have 4 cards that actively are usable as supports in any way, shape or form, both passive and active support. So like this Snuggie, for example, was a passive support. These 2 are enter the battlefield. This is an active support. There's only 4 in the whole deck. You have 3 conditional beaters who actually grow stronger or are unable to attack depending on the situation. You have 8 vanillas in the deck, and you have 8 secrets as well. Meanwhile, when it comes to the RNG triggered effects, you have 5, 10, 15, 20, 22 of them. So in a 50 card deck, because this game actually requires you to play specifically 50 cards, almost half the deck is just RNG gamble cards. But yeah, for the most part, that's the game. It's actually fairly simple, in my opinion, to understand, because if you have played any other card game before, it uses concepts that should be fairly familiar to people who have played card games before. There isn't too much that you have to do or like worry about in terms of like actual calculation and like how to best to react from hand. And there isn't much draw at all, so you don't really have to worry about like figuring out when to draw and like any of that. For the record, the hand size maximum is actually 5, the starting amount that you start with, so you can't really choose to not play things for too long because your hand will just get stuck very quickly. From what I've seen for some of the other decks that come out in the future, you do get a lot more effects in terms of things that interact with the retire zone as well as with the graveyard and all, but like with the trial deck, this is basically all that it has. Anyway, that's how you play the game. Now, back to the other me, who will explain and like go through the rest of the analysis of this game.
Whoa! What the hell? I'm still wearing the same clothes. It's almost like I recorded the middle part somewhere else at a different time, and this was actually recorded at the same time as the opening. Whoa, can you imagine? Couldn't be me. While all of the card games that are out there are luck-based as well to some extent, more often than not, when it comes to the building of your deck, what the players are actually incentivized to do is to find ways to increase the probability that they'll draw into what they want, or perhaps to build their deck in a unique way that actually feels entertaining to them, right? It could be something like an aggro deck that rushes and tries to beat your opponent down quickly, so your deck is full of very cheap things that are less likely to break in general, but they are only really strong in the early game. Or maybe you build a deck that has a lot of draw and ways to search through your deck so that you can quickly look for the things that you want and try to stop all your opponents before they can actually beat you down instead. There are many ways that many games give you to actually try to deal with the situation at hand. But the issue I find with Victory Spark is the fact that most of the decks tend to play in the same way, and this is in part due to the same issue that I feel like White Schwartz has, where the game's rules, or the way that Bushiroad rules it, is that they kind of force you to use cards that are from the specific series, and only with cards from that series, so there isn't a lot of mix and matching that you can do. Every booster is an isolated booster that can only be used with itself, and therefore, if each booster is built to kind of play more or less in the same way, there isn't much ways that you can then take cards from another booster, put it in, and then try to create something different either. Every deck is just going to end up playing more or less the same, and it then leads to the monotony that the game kind of has as well. On top of that, with Victory Spark, I feel like the game is also designed in a way where it kind of overly incentivizes people to go down the gambly luck-based route instead, as most of the game's strongest effects tend to be from the top of the deck triggers rather than from something that you would play from hand to then tactically do something instead. And this is something that we can see from the types of decks that were being suggested on some of the websites within Japan at the time. Now granted, we don't really have any of the tournament deck lists and the like because those weren't really a thing back in the earlier days of the game. Bushiroad never recorded any of these if there were any like massive tournaments that were played at the time, so we don't have access to any of that information. However, what we do have is the information put up by people who were actively playing and recording, like logging all of the cards that were being released at the time. So even from the perspective of these players, when we look at the way the deck is designed, what we do see is that there is a greater majority of cards that are level 3 and level 2 in the deck, and some with level 4 as well, instead of cards that are level 1. Like, there is an inverted pyramid going on if you look at the levels versus the number of cards put in for them. So basically half the cards in your deck are actually just triggers. I wasn't actually joking when I said that like the game slowly devolved in that direction. Like half of these decks, all of their utility, all of the biggest value engines in the deck are all RNG triggers off the top. Things such as your deck searches, your draws, your board wipes, even the strongest creatures that you could play. The cheapest way that you could basically play them for almost free is to just trigger them off the top of the deck. And this is something that if you were to look at the way that some of the people who uploaded videos of themselves playing the game played it as well, the biggest ways that an attack would get stopped was not so much that you played something to counter the opponent's effect. Like, the game has cancels and counters, but you almost never really have a reason to use it. Typically, most of the attacks, when someone's going super aggressively and trying to beat down their opponent and taking them down multiple times in a turn, the thing that would stop them is either them happening to trigger something off the top of their deck that was so strong that it could stop the attack, or them happening to have the exact identical card to the card on the field that would basically allow them to do the card block thing. But even that effect is a lot less likely to happen as compared to them just triggering something off the top that just stops the entire attack altogether. As you can imagine, basically this means that it will push away many of the people who are looking for a more, interactive card game experience, because while we all like to basically stop our opponents from doing things in card games, we like to do that through interacting with them to stop them from doing the thing. And I get what some people might say, that like, oh yeah, but it's an anime card game, it's meant for collection, nobody's gonna play it. But I would beg to differ. We have seen how successful the One Piece card game has been so far. Granted, you could say that it's One Piece, it's kind of different, but the fact of the matter is that many people who play many different card games, the same with the League of Legends card game, God save the souls of whoever is playing that as well. People who enjoy the IP are getting into the game, and people who play other card games like Magic, for example, or even Yu-Gi-Oh! Are also trying those games out. And even if we take the hardcore card gamers out of the picture, fact of the matter is that One Piece does have a player base of its own, and even Weiss Schwarz does have a player base. It may not be the biggest, like compared to something like Yu-Gi-Oh! It's not that impressive. Compared to something like the One Piece card game, it's not that crazy, but it does have an active community of people who play and that go for its world tournament, that play it like both within Japan and within Southeast Asia as well. The fact of the matter is that most of these games actually have people on both ends of the spectrum, and I feel like that is what caused Victory Spark to not do as well, because while it managed to potentially capture the people in the collector side of things, it doesn't really appeal to the people on the other end who want to play a card game and who want the typical types of interactions that a card game can afford. And this is especially so because of the fact that Bushiroad has an alternative ready for people who want a balance of both. And so in the end, because of the fact that they actually took Victory Spark and made it what it was in the end, basically taking it away from just being a Sunday and magazine collab game and making it a more generically like variety IP based game, they kind of made it lose its niche and made it a more direct competitor with their own other title. Their other title, which actually has more gameplay in terms of the deck building and interaction with your opponent than what they did with Victory Spark, which as a result would cause Weiss Schwarz to basically pick up a much bigger audience than Victory Spark could have hoped to, because while both appealed to the same niche on one end, Victory Spark didn't manage to capture the other side of the market that Weiss Schwarz at the very least managed to capture some level of. In a way, while it may not appeal to me in the same way that something like Magic does, it does have its own unique like positive points to it that make it fun as a card game as well, which I genuinely didn't get the same sense while playing Victory Spark. And so you basically have a situation where, you know, as Bushiroad, you have two games that both kind of do the same thing. One obviously ends up with a bigger market than the other. And so, you know, as a corporation would, they would obviously want to put more of their budget and time and effort into this game that is doing better, rather than putting it equally into both, which is basically gonna, you know, cause a downward spiral where the thing that was not doing well as is gonna do even worse, and this thing is probably gonna do better as the resources are starting to shift towards being diverted here instead. And so given a few years, the game that ended up being more neglected just ended up not doing as well. And that was quite likely, in my opinion at least, why it feels like Victory Spark failed where Weiss Schwarz succeeded. In the end, the reason why it failed really does feel like it just comes down to a more systems game design choice issue that Bushiroad basically had at the time. Because the thing is that systems wise, there were things I feel like they could potentially have done with Victory Spark that might have made it more interesting. They could have chosen to focus more on getting the game to appeal to a wider audience by trying to improve the gameplay on top of keeping the collector value side of things alive. And they showed that they were kind of willing to do this with the introduction of new systems as well. Like they basically added the equivalent of a Hearthstone secret years before Hearthstone even existed, thereby, you know, adding new rules and completely new things that the player would have to consider while trying to build their deck. But even then, it feels like while doing all of these things to try and add in something new, they also played a little too much into trying to ensure that the RNG elements of the game have very good payoffs. And because of the fact that they constantly tried to give people a critical mass of the RNG elements with good payoffs, the game kind of didn't manage to lean in the more strategic direction even when they tried to add in new systems, because in the end those systems just don't gel as well with the more aggressive RNG playstyle, because, you know, with things such as trying to jam and stop them from throwing their abilities, that still doesn't have much value. And even with the Hearthstone secrets thing, it's like if the condition is never met, the thing is just like a dead weight on the board. And they didn't really give enough variety of things that would basically trigger in a way that would feel like a good enough payoff to actually make the cards feel like something rewarding that you would want to use within the game. Like I actually tested a deck out with a friend as well, and it's like I almost never felt a reason to use the secret, because the moment I put it down, it becomes a dead card on the board like half the time. And so a lot of these systems felt like they just kind of got overshadowed by the RNG elements and the systems that support that instead, in that rather than creating the tools that will allow people to strategically play around the game's RNG elements to find ways to make the deck stable or make interesting decks that could play in a certain way that would be unique and surprise your opponent, the game kind of just devolved into just being this thing where the new cards and systems and the tools that they introduced just further fed into this same playstyle instead. And on top of that, the systems themselves don't really do a very good job of actually trying to help make the series feel anything like the actual series that they are based on. Now granted, this is an issue that Weiss Schwarz has to some extent as well, but I still feel that at least Weiss Schwarz kinda tries to play into the series every once in a while. You have like the funny things with like the Aqua card in the Konosuba deck. Like it basically deals enough damage to like most likely not hit your opponent instead, because it's just gonna like forcibly cause them to cancel instead. Like it's a bit of a meme card, but you know, it feels in line with the way that Aqua's like punch works in the series as well. Like the Maho Ako cards as well for Weiss Schwarz Rose, like a lot of that deck was basically just revolving around transforming the characters between the original, their base like normal person form and the magical girl form, and it's like a lot of swapping the cards in and out of the graveyard. So like at least there was an attempt to do something that made it feel like the series, and I do feel like with the series and the games that they made subsequently after Weiss Schwarz as well as Victory Spark, they actually did a much better job of representing the individual series in a way that felt interesting. But at the same time, it feels like the issue with Victory Spark is that it really just never felt like it reached a point where the characters, the card effects felt like they were doing something that you as the player who likes the series could look at and be like, oh yeah, that's cool. That kind of does feel like what the series would kind of do, right? Every deck was basically doing the same thing of trigger cut off the top of the deck, board wipe the opponent, trigger cut off the top of the deck, search your deck for more stuff. Every deck kind of ends up feeding into the same playstyle because of the fact that there weren't enough card effects that allowed you to basically play it in a way that would kind of give it more of an individuality between the different series. And I feel like that's just in part more an issue of them not trying to introduce the type of card effects that would have allowed for this to happen, right? They could have just like introduced things like what Y Schwartz had as well, like transforming characters that go in and out of like specific parts of the field, or maybe allowing you a little bit of the ability to scry the cards on the top of your deck as well. Although I feel like with the specific way in which this game is designed, it's a little bit too strong to be able to scry because of the fact that they also simultaneously design the trigger effects to be so strong. Like if they didn't, maybe it wouldn't have been as much of an issue, but this once again goes back to the issue of the design space that they drove the game into, I guess. But that said, that's all for me for today. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video, which is basically just a look into one of the other card games that Bushiroad has made across the years. I don't know if this video is going to be super long, but I decided that since this is a game that there's a little bit more information out there about it, it's easier to just make it a video that wouldn't be like 1 hour long as well. So yeah, hopefully this doesn't end up being like super long and like causing the people with the TikTok brain who can't like watch a video if I don't go like every like 5 seconds to click off. Thank you all for watching. Thank you to the very epic people over here who help to support the channel as always. Thanks to you guys that I can keep making these silly videos with this funny content, hopefully for you guys. And spending money on like silly cardboard crack like with the VS cards. They weren't that expensive, but you know, it helps to keep me able to make this type of content for you guys as well. But that's it. Until next time, I'll be seeing y'all around when I play another card game. I don't know when that's gonna be, but sometime in the future, I guess. But until next time, take care and bye-bye.